very sorry for being late. I'm very, very sorry for being late. I sound like I'm being insincere. I really am. I actually do genuinely try to get these out on time, or at least near enough to time. So I don't have any excuses. Well, no, I do. I do have an excuse. Hi. First of all, hello. Hi, this is Brian Lloyd. This is Screenland. This is going to you on Sunday, Bank Holiday Sunday. I don't have any movies to review this week, but what I do have is another Screenland Suggestion Box, and I also, because it's all S's, a very, very early review of Saipan. Yeah, that's right. The Roy Keane, the, possibly the most divisive moment in Irish history since the Civil War. I think it's fair to say. I mean, it was a pretty huge moment, and like Steve Coogan playing Mick McCarthy, I mean, there's a lot of questions around it. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to start off, I'm going to do the suggestion box, and then when that's done, I'm going to move on to Saipan. So let's get into it. Our first question comes from future Screenland guest, former entertainment.ie employee and colleague, Deirdre Malumbi, and she wants to know, would you still give Finding Dory 5 stars? Deirdre, thank you for the question. Yes, I fucking would still give it 5 stars. And you know why I'd still give it 5 stars? Because it's great. First of all, Finding Dory, I feel, is the perfect companion to Finding Nemo, because if Finding Nemo is about, parenthood and what that entails, then Finding Dory is about, it's the continuing evolution of parenthood and the idea of like, okay, what is it like to have a child with that requires special needs? Because that's really what it's about. Dory has, memory issues, and her parents are just trying their damnedest to, just help her, that kind of way. That's it. Like, that's all it is. It's just like, they just want to be the best parents they can be. And, they never stopped loving their daughter and everything. But, there it is. And like, let's talk about the cast, right? So Al Brooks back as Marilyn obviously makes sense. Fucking Ed O'Neill as an octopus, right? Caitlin Olsen, the whale shark who can't see, who's Dory's childhood friend. Ty Burrell, the beluga whale who gets lost because he has a concussion. I mean, having Diane Keaton and Eugene Levy as Dory's parents, if that is not perfect casting. Talk about fucking, Dominic West and Idris Elba as sea lions, but they look like, they're Californian sea lions, but they sound like they should be fucking propping up the bar at a Vic in EastEnders. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know why Dee had issues with Finding Dory. I don't get it. I never understood why you had problems with it. I remember writing that review and thinking, this was fucking brilliant. And you were like, I didn't like it. And it's like, Dee, I could drop a lot of dirt. No, hold on a second. I'm going to be the bigger person here. Dee, you're entitled to your opinions. You're entitled to think that Finding Dory is not a 5-star film. I, however, believe that it is a 5-star film. I thought it was great. I would happily recommend it to anyone. I think it can comfortably stand alongside Finding Nemo. That it hasn't had the sort of cultural cachet as Finding Nemo, that's okay. Fine. I still think it is a powerful piece of work. Okay, fine. Ellen DeGeneres, whatever you want to say about her or whatever. Can we separate the art from the artist? I don't know. But I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I'll happily stand over it. And while I'm fucking on it, since you put the penny in, I'm going to talk about Independence Resurgence. I still think that's a 4-star film. History is going to prove me right on this. That is going to be 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about Independence Resurgence the way we talk about Starship Troopers, okay? That it was a seminal piece of sci-fi satire that just did not find its audience at the time, but is now considered a work of depth, all right? So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Adam Shanahan, Sonic Architect Adam Shanahan from the No Encore podcast, just says Extraction. I am going to presume that he is talking about the Netflix movie with Chris Hemsworth. I remember seeing the first one, and I remember being bitterly disappointed with it because, like, you know, I'm nearly sure this was Chris Hemsworth's first kind of post-Marvel movie, or it was the first one after Avengers Endgame, and it was like, you know, the Russo brothers were producing, and the guy who was directing it was this famous stuntman. I remember not liking it. However, I remember seeing Extraction 2 and fucking loving it. Now, why did I love it? It was dumb as a bag of hammers. I mean, just dumb as a bag of fucking hammers. And I remember there was a big, huge train sequence in it that I loved. And there was I remember interviewing the director of it, whose name escapes me now. He was a good guy though. And I remember telling him, like, I got out my stopwatch. I went back and watched it again. I got out my stopwatch. And I think it was like a 17-minute, I want to say, unbroken. I mean, it was obviously cuts, but they were hidden well. You know, continuous shot, let's say. 17 minutes leading up to the train sequence that I thought was so well done. And, you know, it's a great example of craft and action, which I think I've talked about before. You know, there are some films that are works of art and there are some films that are works of craft. And I think Extraction 2 was absolutely a work of craft. It was, you know, the director, God damn it, I can't remember his name. I'm going to have to look that up. But it was really him kind of, you could tell that he was getting more confident as he was going along, you know, that sort of way. Like, you could tell that Sam Hargrave, that was his name. Sam Hargrave, he was the stunt coordinator on several films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he was also the second unit director for season 2 of The Mandalorian. Okay, that's interesting. He's doing a film called Matchbox. Oh my God, they're actually making a film out of fucking Matchbox. Jesus Christ, the Matchbox TV. Okay, here we go. So, this is the premise for Matchbox. The plot follows Sean, a former soldier who reunites with his childhood friends after a successful mission, only to be kidnapped and framed. The group must clear their names and rediscover their friends in a high-stakes cross-continental adventure. Stars John Cena, good guy, Jessica Biel, Sam Richardson, Arturo Castro, Teyona Paris. God, she's in everything. She's great though. Great to see her getting work. And Corey Stoll, also in everything. Good for him though. Yeah, that should be good. And it's an action kind of comedy thing. That could be good, I guess. So Extraction and Extraction 2, I liked it. I really, really did like it. Again, dumb as a bag of hammers. Just dumb as a bag of hammers. But really, really enjoyable. Like, really, really enjoyable. Really, you know, bigger, bolder. And again, yeah, it's that thing of like you're seeing a director progress. You can really see like he started there and now he's here, and that there is much more kind of fluidity. There's much more kind of, it's not just rehashing the same thing. You can tell that there's more confidence with it. And that happened. I mean, another great example of that would be the John Wick series. Like, you go back and you watch the first John Wick movie, and it's really tight and really simple, but in a very kind of beautiful and elegant way. You know, it's just really clean. And then you go watch the final John Wick, and it's all about maximalism. It's all about making it look as beautiful and as gorgeous as possible. And you see, you know, fucking Bill Skarsgård turn up, and he's got like the suits, and he's like, it's all like ornate and just, over the top. And I love it. It's so good. It's just, it's the same kind of buzz. And I would imagine Sam Hargrave, if he got the chance to continue on with Extraction 3, which I doubt he will, but, you could see that you could probably make it even a bit more kind of glossy and a bit more kind of sleek and a bit more whatever. But, yeah, Extraction. Chris Hemsworth, though, I don't know. I mean, his career kind of seems to be just flattening out, seems like it's just sort of flattening out. Like, it's just, you kind of get this sense that, like, and I don't deny anyone this. I do not deny anyone this, but it kind of feels like he just made all his money and he's all like, yeah, I can tap out now. I don't need to do this. I've done everything I need to do. Like, he did Furiosa. He did The Huntsman, remember those? And he did, Transformers 1. Transformers 1, by the way. I want to talk about that just because I'm on one now, right? Transformers 1 was a fantastically well-made animated movie that fucking none of yous went to see. And it was great. And I really highly recommend it. Go watch it. I am someone who grew up with the originals. I think we kind of talked about... Maybe have I not talked about Transformers before? Yeah, I love Transformers. I thought it was great. Starscream was my guy. Chris Latta, I think, was the original voice actor. He was also the voice of Cobra Commander in G.I. Joe. Nice little tidbit there. But I loved it. Transformer 1, and Chris Hemsworth was in it, and he voiced Optimus Prime, and it was Brian Tyree Henry voiced Megatron. And John Hamm, I think, was in it. Was John Hamm in it? Or was it Steve Buscemi? Yeah, John Hamm was in it. Yeah, that was right. John Hamm, and he voiced, because I've got Wikipedia open now, he voiced Sentinel Prime, the false ruler of Cybertron. I should go back and watch that, actually. It was a really good movie. Anyways, so that is Extraction. Okay, next question in the... Screenland Suggestion Box. This comes in from Connor Jackson. Should they bring back This Is Your Life? I think they should. Was that the one where they bring on the famous people and they'd have like people from their lives come up and like talk about them? Lovely. I vaguely remember the one for... It was either Christopher Lee or was Vincent Price. It was either Christopher Lee or Vincent Price. Yeah, they probably should make one of those. They were lovely, in fairness. Yeah. I think it was an Irish guy that actually used to host that as well. I remember the big leather book, the big red leather book that the guy used to open up and talk to. But then again, maybe it's one of those things that would could only exist in that era of terrestrial television. I don't necessarily know if people would want to have that kind of reunion on public, because this is the thing, right? Like, so I've done a bit more junkets recently. Like, I was over in London the week before last interviewing. Can I say who it is? I don't know. Should I say? I better not. Okay, I was interviewing an actor and a director. It was my first time interviewing said actor and director. And they were great. And it was a great interview. And I'm very, very happy with it and all the rest of it. But it reminded me... And they were great. And everyone was great. And this is not in me anyway disparaging anything. I was very happy to go over. But it reminded me a lot of the fact that, the interviews that you get to do in most junkets are like 5 to 6 minutes long. And as much as you might want to delve in and go a little bit deeper and get them do follow-ups and all the rest of it, the reality of it is that people don't really watch those kind of interviews anymore. Like Charlie Rose, for example. Leave aside again, Charlie Rose, he's cancelled and all the rest of it. And I had this actually, now that I'm thinking of it, Jen Gannon was like, he wasn't a good interviewer. Jen, if you're listening, girl, I disagree with you. I think Charlie Rose was a terrific interviewer. I'm not going to get into his personal life. He was obviously a bad dude. But I do think he was a great interviewer. And Definitely a lot better than fucking Parky. I'll say that. I think Parky was full of shit. And I would point to that interview with Helen Mirren and just be like, there you go. Like, that's all you need to know. But, you know, those kind of like interviews where there is real depth and there is real kind of unearthing, you don't really see that much anymore. Like, even like later episodes of Mark Maron, it felt like every time he was interviewing good actors, he was just getting acting lessons from them, which I appreciate. I mean, fair enough. He's trying to be an actor. He's trying to get better at it. He's trying to get all different perspectives and stuff like that. So I can respect that. And I suppose, you know, some actors, they are happy to talk about it. Name drop. When I was interviewing Clive Owen, like he was doing this horrible film that was directed by Andrew Niccol. Fucked if I can remember the name of it now, but it was kind of like about social media and stuff. And we were talking, and I remember at the end I kind of said like, God, this must be so boring. It's better to do it than to talk about it. And he broke his shit laughing. And he was like, you're absolutely right. Like, talking about acting is so boring for an actor. You just rather do it. And, you know, it's, you're trying to kind of get them to, you're trying to get them to open up and you're trying to get them to talk, but like you've only got like 5 to 6 minute windows, and you know, you go into those rooms and they're surrounded by PR people, and like the minute you step out of line or you ask a question that they're not interested in talking to, they will just shut it down, which is why it was so interesting that clip of Keira Knightley got out, where she was doing that interview for something, and somebody asked her about the Harry Potter audiobook thing for Audible, and the interviewer was like, you're understanding that, like, you know, there's currently a boycott underway of this because J.K. Rowling is, you know, actively funding hate groups, well, you know, against her whole anti-trans thing. And Keira Knightley was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you know, I'm doing it. And it's just like the I don't know, it's just it was strange to see that level of kind of openness, that she was just like, yeah, I don't give a shit kind of thing. I mean, she was saying, oh, you know, I wasn't aware of it, but you know, I've done it now, and yeah, that's kind of it. And normally, like, that's mad because I've done interviews before where I've asked questions and I've gotten it back with the question I asked cut out, and it was told we're cutting that out, and you know, I just have to go fucking sit and swivel. So it was strange to see that get out into the open. And this is the thing, isn't it? Because actors and, you know, it's all so careful now. And this isn't a fucking cancel culture rant. Cancel culture rant. That's not this. I think it's just, you know, actors and all the rest of it are so concerned now with how they are perceived that they have to take ownership of everything. And that includes, you know, doing interviews, and that they will only do interviews where they know what they're going to get, which is why you have, you know, BuzzFeed puppies, and they go on Hot Ones, and, you know, yeah, fine, they'll do Conan O'Brien or whatever, but that's a comedy podcast. That's never going to get deep, you know? Like, I was listening to Sean Penn did an interview with The Daily for the New York Times on the run up to One Battle After Another. And, you know, like, Sean Penn, I think, is a guy who could take a fairly in-depth question. And this isn't a knock on the guy from the New York Times, but it felt like he was kind of firing softballs at him, you know, that kind of way. And this is One Battle After Another. I mean, this is a fairly political film. Like, there's meat there, you know, that kind of way. You can dig in, and he just kind of didn't. And it was like, it was a pleasant interview, but I was just like, wow, this is kind of a bit rote, isn't it? So, yeah, I don't know, felt weird. Okay, final question, and this comes in from Mike Sheridan. former Screenland guest, former editor of entertainment.ie. His documentary, by the way, Amplified. This is my plug. It is coming out, finally. Got up off his arse and fucking decided to release the thing. It's coming out in January. He doesn't have a release date yet. Mike, if you're listening, come back on and plug it. We'll definitely do that. His question is, has Rotten Tomatoes ruined film criticism? This is an interesting question because I was on Rotten Tomatoes. I was a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. I am not anymore. And Dee Malumbi as well was a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. And I remember at the time when we were trying to get certified, we were trying to get entertainment.ie certified as a certified outlet. And they would only allow me and Dee to be certified for some reason. So what we were doing was we would basically just upload our interview. And the process is very incredibly boring. You literally just took I think it was 200 words or 200 characters from your review, and then you put in your score, and then you basically assigned it rotten or fresh. And that is a simplification, isn't it? Is it good or is it bad? I mean, it's kind of like what I was talking about last week about Tron Ares, that Tron Ares isn't good enough to warrant its own existence, but it's not bad enough to be interesting. Like I've talked about before about, I think maybe it was other interviews, I can't remember, but this idea of the noble failure. And the most recent example I could point to of a noble failure would be Fantastic Four. Not Fantastic Four First Steps, the one before that, the one with Michael B. Jordan and Kate Mara and Whiplash guy, Miles Teller. And Toby Cabell was fucking Doctor Doom. And you could see what Josh Trank, the director, was trying to do. He was trying to give it a sort of a body horror, Cronenbergian kind of vibe. Which is really quite ballsy for a comic book movie, that kind of way. Because when you think about it, Mr. Fantastic is able to stretch his body. The Human Torch sets himself on fire. It's very, and The Thing, Ben Grimm, it lends itself to body horror. Now, obviously, the movie was a mess. And you watch it and you can tell that it has been cut to shreds. And you can tell that he did not have a good grasp on what he was doing. But they were trying to do something different. They were trying to do something at a time when, these movies were just being cranked out to beat the band. And this is the guy that did Chronicle. The idea of a found footage horror or a found footage superhero movie. How clever is that? Tying in Akira and stuff, you know what I mean? Okay, some people would say, it's just a remake of Akira. Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of references. But you know what I'm trying to say? There was an interesting take on it. It got away from him. And that to me is a noble failure. That is I'm trying to do something different. It didn't come off, but it's worth seeing. Now, are you going to say, is just using this as an example, is it a bad movie? Yes, on balance, it is a bad movie. If I was uploading it to Rotten Tomatoes, sure. I would have given it, I think I gave it 2 out of 5. Maybe it was 1 out of 5, I can't remember. And I would have to assign it a rotten rating. But really, where I think the fault lies is in people. And you're going to say, what? And I'm going to tell you. People don't read anymore. They just don't. People don't read reviews anymore. Now, you're listening to this podcast, okay? So chances are you might read reviews, or you might listen to reviews. You are in the minority. I'm going to tell you that right now. You are in the minority. Most people don't read film reviews. They don't read TV reviews. if they listen to podcasts, generally speaking, they are not of this ilk that you are listening to. Generally speaking, they're not. And that's fine. I mean, like, you know, people are entitled to do whatever they want to do. I'm not saying it, but I'm saying, you know, we're talking about, you know, the question that Mike is saying, like, has it ruined criticism? No, I think people ruined criticism themselves. People stopped reading. People stopped, you know, delving deeper in their cultural consumption, for lack of a better word. People just want the easy thing. People just want, you know, second screen is the bigger problem here, because, you know, you look at like something on Netflix or something on Prime Video or something on Apple TV or something, whatever, they're told you have to make the plot very straightforward and very, very simple, because people are going to be watching this with 70% of their attention. 30% is going to be on their phones. And this is why, you know, like, I know I started off Screenland to do kind of TV and film and broader kind of, you know, screens in our lives, but it's kind of denigrated, I guess, whenever I come to do my reviews on movies, because, you know, I find it very difficult to watch TV now, and I'm talking like streaming, without having my phone out. I really have to fucking pay attention when I'm watching TV, because I will just get, if it's not immediately sucking me in, I'll just take my phone out and be flicking on my phone, or I'll answer an email or something, or I'll get up and kind of potter around. Now, it's probably likely that I've got some sort of fucking neurospicy thing going on, but yet when I go to a cinema, and this is even like if I'm going with me and Kate, or if I'm going with a mate of mine or whatever, and I'm not there for work, I'm just there to enjoy it, I'm still able to give it my full attention, because when you go to a cinema, the etiquette is you put your phone away and you are locked in just by virtue of being there, you know? And this is, you know, I've talked about this before, like, there are some movies that, you know, you need to see them in a cinema because you need to be closed in. You need to close the room down and you need to focus, because that's the best way to experience it. It's not about scale or sound or anything, but it's just about zeroing in. For example, and I knew I wasn't going to do reviews this week, but fuck it, we're rolling now. The Mastermind, the Kelly Reichardt film, I saw it, loved it. Josh O'Connor plays a kind of a fuck up art thief, and, you know, Kelly Reichardt, she's known as kind of like a slow cinema and all the rest of it. And yeah, it's a film of lovely, quiet, slow paced, you know, the world that they are in feels so real, you know, that kind of way. Like, there's a bit in it where he's locking up the art pieces into this little wooden case thing, and he knocks over his ladder, and he looks at it, and it's just him going, fuck. And it's just, you know, that wouldn't happen. It's like a long lead up to a joke, and you wouldn't get that on a Netflix show. Do you know what I mean? Or a show on Prime Video. And it's sad. You know, it's sad. But, you know, has Rotten Tomatoes ruined movie criticism? No. It hasn't ruined it. I think it's made it worse. I think it was getting bad already. I think, you know, we have, because there are so many people have so many opinions, you can be a letterboxed film critic now. Or you can start a podcast like I'm doing right now. It's so easy that we have just this surplus of opinions, and people are drowning in opinions. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are drowning in it. Whereas before, like, you'd watch Barry Norman, or you would read, you know, you'd watch Roger Ebert, or you'd watch, you know, Barry Norman, or you would read Pauline Kael, or, you know, whatever. Or Dave Fannin. Dave Fannin was my guy. Like, you know, like, kind of growing up, it was Dave Fannin. It was like, you know, what did he think of it? Or what was your man's name? Brian Redden. The Last Picture Show. I mean, fucking hell, if that film, that TV show on RTE, The Last Picture Show, that was seminal. That was formative. That was it for me. That was my film school. I didn't go to film school. I didn't finish college. That was it. I watched The Last Picture Show from when I was like 10 years old until I think I was about like 15 or 16. And you had the big movie in between. That was my film school. And then go to Extravision. Anyways, has Rotten Tomatoes ruined film criticism? No, but I think it's definitely not helped it. I think people have to take ownership of the fact that they are not being more discerning. That's the problem. I think people are not being more discerning. Discernment is lost. We are not giving our attention because that's all we really have anymore. You know, that kind of way. Like, there's been such a wealth transfer in the last 20 years that we don't have anything left other than our attention, and we are not being discerning about it. And until we get that back, and I feel like that's coming because I think AI is becoming such slop that eventually it will just take over everything, and then people will just put down their phones and will be free. And then we'll be able to, unlearn all this bullshit. I'm just gone off on one now, haven't I? Wow. I really need to get more guests. Jesus Christ. Okay. Thank you for your questions. I am now going to seal up the Screenland Suggestion Box, and with it, possibly my dignity. Right. Let's get into it. Saipan. I saw a very, very early screening of this. This isn't out until New Year's Day, right? So you are getting this review way in advance. Yeah, so just get on with it, I guess. So, directed by Glenn Leyburn and Lisa Barris-Dessau. It's written by Paul Fraser. Steve Coogan, the great Steve Coogan, plays Mick McCarthy, and Hardwicke plays Roy Keane. Now, I was quite reticent about this because, well, first of all, I know nothing about football, but I do know this incident. I remember this incident vividly. And for people who don't know, or people who may have forgotten, what happened was the Irish football team went out to Saipan, which is an island in the Northern Mariana Island Group, an unincorporated territory of the United States. Okay, so they flew out there. It was basically all about them getting acclimatized because they were going to be playing in the 2002 FIFA World Cup, which was in Korea and Japan. And when they got there, the pitch that they were supposed to train on was in shit. The hotel that they were staying in was terrible. The food that they were given was absolute muck. It was like cheese sandwiches and stuff like that. And Roy Keane was, playing for a world-class team. He was playing for Manchester United. This was at the height of his powers. And he was coming from, the pinnacle of his sport, but then going to the national team, the Irish national team. And, the Irish national team has not done terribly well when it comes to football. I mean, the closest we got was Italia 90, and we got to the quarterfinals, and the country just blew up. Like, I remember that so fucking vividly. Most Irish people, and most people who were alive during Italia 90 remember it so well, and USA 94 as well. And that shot of Jack Charlton looking out over the pitch and, tears in his eyes, and it was fucking cinematic. And this was cinematic. The 2002, the Saipan incident was cinematic for a completely different reason. Because you had this clash of personalities. But more than that was the fact that it was a fucking farce from start to finish. So much so, Paul Howard went off and wrote a great opera comedy called Eanna, which I saw. And I remember going into Saipan thinking, they've already kind of done this. This was a comedy. This was a whole fucking comedy of errors. And I was worried from the trailers I saw that they were going to play this very po-faced and that they were going to be very straight about it and just not see the inherent absurdity of the whole thing. Mercifully, and I mean mercifully, the film gets it all in. I was sitting next to Zara Hederman, another Screenland guest, when we were watching it. And I said to her, I turned to her and said, God, I don't really know what to make of this. And she was like, this is so, like, if they don't get the cheese sandwiches in, I'm going to riot, like. And first scene, when they get to Saipan and they pull off the thing and there's the cheese sandwiches. And it's a funny moment, like, you see it and it's just like, what the fuck? And, there was that great book, Champagne Football, which really blew the lid off the FAI and what was going on there and stuff like that. And, I have to imagine that the lawyers for your man, whose name I have forgotten, John Delaney. His lawyers must have gotten involved, because there is very much a stand-in character for John Delaney, but he's not called John Delaney. But whatever, because I don't want to get sued. But that was playing in my head, basically, was the kind of the absurdity. And they got it. They really, really got it. They got how stupid the whole thing was. They got how kind of like comedic and just like, how for somebody like Roy Keane, who was viewed, not anymore, but at the time was viewed as this humorless, deeply intense, deeply angry, just a fucking maniac of football. Well, not even a maniac. That's not the right word. But he was just like zero crack, laser focused. And for him to rock up in Saipan and the place isn't even close to being usable, that sort of way. Like there's a really funny bit. And again, this is the thing, like they really got the humour in it when he sits down with Mick, played by Steve Coogan, who does a great job, by the way, and Hardwicke. They're both great in this. But, they sit down because they're trying to kind of show the rest of the lads that they've worked out their differences when they haven't, but they're just trying. And Mick says, this is good, the lads will see this. And Roy's like, yeah, they will, yeah. And then Mick goes, oh yeah, listen, the lads sorted out the banana boat for tomorrow. And Roy just cuts him off. He goes, yeah, we don't need to do small talk. And just goes back to eating. And it's just so fucking funny. And I love that. I love the fact that they found the humour in the humourlessness of that era Roy Keane, Steve Coogan was iffy about him because, like, first of all, he looks nothing like Mick McCarthy. I'll say that right up. He didn't even cut his hair to look like Mick McCarthy, which I thought was whatever. And Mick McCarthy is a funny guy. Like, can't get any worse, can it, Mick? It can. That's just, come on, like. And they even brought in the whole fucking Linda Martin song as well. Like, so, like, it's just, Steve Coogan was a great choice. And Eanna Hardwicke, who was a very, very serious actor, they were able to kind of, I don't want to say crowbar comedy out of him, but it's the straight man to the funny man, that sort of way. That's just the classic makeup of comedy. And, he doesn't, Eanna Hardwicke, like, he doesn't yuck up the corkiness for a laugh. It's very much rooted in reality, in the sense of like, yeah, I'm looking at this the same as you are, Roy. This is bullshit. And if I was you, I would be fucking pissed. And I would be roaring and shouting. But he doesn't really roar and shout. Well, he does a bit, but, it makes sense. The point is that the film gets it very well that Roy Keane was correct in pointing out the absolute lack of professionalism and just the bullshit that the FAA was going through, Then conversely, you can see it from Mick McCarthy's side, because he's like, I'm doing the best I can here. You know, I'm trying to make this work. And he's probably too much of a people pleaser. And he's, you know, and it gets at that kind of, you know, the egos and the clash of egos between the two of them. And, you know, Mick believes himself to be a winner. And, you know, well, that's just all we want. But of course, you know, the reality of it is that Mick was, you know, not equal to the task. He just wasn't. He couldn't manage them. And, you know, maybe, like, there's a great scene right at the start, when Alex Ferguson, I don't know who's voicing him, rings Mick McCarthy, and he's just like shouting down the phone at him. Alex Ferguson is shouting down the phone at Mick McCarthy, and he's just completely dismisses Mick McCarthy. Mick's just kind of like, yeah, all right, yeah, cool, okay, no problem. And you kind of get that's setting the tone, isn't it? Because that's the management style that Roy Keane is used to. Now, as I understand it, and again, I don't know a lot about football here, so like there was probably loads of stuff in this that just right over the head. But I do know that Roy Keane has since soured his opinion, I guess, of Alex Ferguson. If I'm right in saying that. If you watch football and you're into football, please correct me on that. I do think his opinion has soured somewhat. And I think, you know, it's not that Roy Keane talks about him in very kind of reverential fashion, but it's just that you can tell that he views Alex Ferguson and just all that Manchester United represents in a much more kind of, this is the pinnacle and I want Ireland and the national team to be at this level, and the fact that you can't get it there is a fucking disgrace. And it gets really dark. I mean, like, you know, the big final confrontation gets at something that I don't want to give it away, but it gets really uncomfortable. And I remember watching and thinking, oof. And they do it brilliantly. I mean, I really do recommend Saipan. And I am not a football guy at all, but they did it really, really well. They did it as good as I think they could have done it. And yeah, that final scene really kind of stuck out. The final confrontation between Mick and Roy is handled very, very well. It's going to be huge. I'll tell you right now, everyone's going to go see this. And they should, because it's very, very well done. And, you know, it's kind of telling, I think, that it's been 20 years and we're still talking about it. It's still, you know, if we were to stop 5 people on the road and you were to ask them about Saipan and was Mick right, was Roy right, you would honestly get 2 different, and you'd get an even split. And the film doesn't necessarily take sides, I don't think. At least it didn't feel like it to me. Like I was watching it and I agreed with both sides. I could see that the FAI in the movie were a farce and just fucking useless and just had no cop whatsoever. And that Roy was right to be pissed off at them, but that at the same time he wasn't willing to sacrifice his standards, which you makes sense. But then at the same time, like, the reason why he's like that is because, like, he's all like, the reason why the fucking everyone loves the Irish is because we're not a threat. You know, we just turn up and, you know, we are not a threat to these people. No wonder they fucking love us. And you can tell that he himself, you know, that's real. That's coming from a real place. Because that is something that I've noticed myself. That is something that pisses me off constantly. I remember, right, Laura Reveal. I once worked in a recruitment agency that I'm not going to name names of, but I fucking hated it. It was one of the worst jobs I ever had. I just hated it. But as part of training, I had to go over to the UK. And it was all cold calling and stuff, and I fucking hated it. And I quit after, a year, I think. And I remember that feeling of just being like, not an object of fun. It's not that, but it's like, I know they weren't taking me seriously. Now, it could have been, now look, you could argue I was young, and this was my first time doing this kind of a job, and maybe it was all in my head or something, but I felt very much like I was almost a figure of amusement, or at the very least jovialness, that I don't think I never called it out, obviously, because I wanted a job, and I remember at the time I was broke and I just needed a job. But I remember being like, ooh, I remember like tightening. I remember being like, I could feel my jaw clenching and my shoulders kind of wrapping up a little bit. And I remember coming home and just like, you know? And I can't imagine being Roy Keane and going through what he went through, being in the UK for so long, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, and all that entailed. That must have just buried something inside of him, you know? And I don't know, look, he's obviously mellowed out now. You watch him on the overlap and stuff, you see the clips of him, and it's mellowed out. It's kind of calcified into a sort of Larry David-esque kind of, you know, put upon sense. But, you know, early 90s Roy Keane, I mean, fucking hell, I'd say if you looked at him cross-eyed, he would have laid you out flat, you know? So, yeah. But anyways, going back to Saipan, very well told, very well executed, about as good as I could have hoped it would be. I love the fact that they got the dramatic element. I love the fact that they got the weight of it, that it turns into, you know, a pressure cooker drama and then an absolute farce in the same breath. Very, very well done. Highly, highly recommend it. It is out New Year's Day in Ireland and the UK. Absolutely go see it. You're going to love it. This is as good as a recommendation as I can give. Okay. Again, I am very, very sorry for leaving this so late. I was off in Westport with my extended family. My wife and I, it was our 5-year wedding anniversary. I didn't bring the recording equipment with me. But yeah, back to normal next week. I will be back with a guest. I'm going to try lock down a guest soon. But we'll be back to normal. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. Have a great bank holiday, and I will see you next time.